Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the Ballerina and the Bodybuilder podcast. Obviously, we have no ballerina today. We have one bodybuilder. Well, two. We have an ex-CrossFitter slash wannabe bodybuilder. Miss Nicola Spencer is in the house. So I am just going to let Nicola take the floor here and let her introduce herself because she is an absolutely amazing human being. She has qualifications coming out her rear end, and Nicola is somebody that I value very much in my life. Value her opinion and her education and her thought process behind a lot of things. And I just love chatting to her. So I couldn't have thought of a better guest to have on the podcast. And you are our first guest. So kick it
Mm,
off.
That's so scary. That's a lot of pressure, you guys.
No, there's no pressure whatsoever. Come on. Join the fucker.
Well, like I have a podcast too, but I like know who the audience is. I know who usually listens, and I'm like, oh, I just got actually quite nervous because I don't know who listens to this. But yeah, that was a nice little intro. How long have we been working together? It's been like in two parts, but definitely over a year now.
Oh my God, way longer. I think we started working like 2021.
Yeah, I feel like I took a little hiatus when my life went to shit. And then I came back and was like, remember how I used to like CrossFit? Yeah, I don't anymore. Can you please program for me?
Yeah, and then I was like literally like, oh my fucking God.
Yeah. So that was cool. So, I mean, yeah, a little bit about me. We obviously met because I signed up to work with Katie, but I am a nutrition coach myself. I tend to work a little bit differently than you, though. And I think our clientele tends to be a little bit different. For instance, I'm never going to walk anybody through a contest prep. That's just not my jam. And I quite frankly don't have the skill set for it. So a lot of my clients, like you, are lifestyle based, but most of them exist, at least originally did, came through like the CrossFit space, which is where I kind of like got into really health and fitness. I mean, I used to run, if you can imagine that. I was that girl who just like ran to burn calories and then was like, this is actually horrible. But I told myself I loved it at the beginning. But then I got introduced to CrossFit in my early 20s and was like, okay, building muscle and like lifting weights is actually so sick. And I spent like a decade just like obsessed with all that. Met my partner through CrossFit, like made so many friends through it, but just I think through moves and like changing gyms and just like not vibing with the space and just like I was in a different headspace too. I ended up falling out of love with it. And I think towards like even the beginning of our working relationship, I was like doing it, but I wasn't passionate about it. I was kind of just going through the motions. And for being like so obsessed with something and like really having most of my identity be built around something for so long, I was like feeling a little lost. And eventually just decided I think it's time I try something new and just like get a new like that zest for like a new thing. So moved into the bodybuilding world and quite quickly realized I was like the smallest girl in the gym and was like, this is terrible. I want to get huge. So I think it's been a year and a half, I think now, of like strictly bodybuilding, like no CrossFit. And it's been a wild ride in that sense for sure.
I will
Yeah.
say, I didn't make Nicola like quick CrossFit. Like I
No, she absolutely did not. Every once in a while, she's like, are you sure you don't want to go and do like a CrossFit workout? I'm like, could you stop, please?
Just stop that shit.
Yeah,
um,
please.
so tell people about like what you're doing right now in terms of coaching as well as your other activities and extracurriculars.
Yeah, there's a lot right now. So my girlfriend and I have a nutrition coaching business. We are in Canada. Maybe you can tell by the difference in accent. I don't know. But we started our business back in 2019. It's almost been
Wow.
4 years to the day. I think we're coming up on our 4 year anniversary, which is pretty cool. And we just started out as like two girls who were like kind of sick of the shit we were seeing, especially like in the CrossFit space, like other girls, kind of just like not knowing what to do with nutrition and really I think the biggest piece is like we had so many girls who were like, I want to look like I lift, but like I have no clue what to do outside the gym. I can come in here and crush it, but like out there, no clue. And so her and I started to just like work together to initially just like dabble and help our friends. And then we're like, well, fuck it, let's do it. And so I was like working another job, she was working another job, and we just started doing it on like our spare time. And then COVID happened, and we are like, fuck it, like let's just put our whole pussy into this and do it. And went from there. So it was kind of like a little bit of a risk at the beginning, but here we are, like we're booked up, full for clients right now. And we've been through like quite a few phases in terms of like who we are, what we want to do, and just like how we want to show up as coaches. We've both got quite a bit of like background, formal education this way or that way. Sarah has a few like different specialties than me, I would say. Overall, like we want to work with like women who are ready to, primarily women. We do have some male clients, but like women who are ready to like show up for themselves, and similar to you, but I think we use very different language than you, like
Yeah.
cut through the BS and just like focus on you for a little bit. Because I think probably with your clients, like most of our clients are like busy fucking individuals. Like they do a lot in their lives. And this has been like a component where it's like they can see it's missing, and there's like a drive to like embrace like fitness, embrace being strong, lifting weights, and like eating accordingly. Um, so that's been kind of like our little business evolution. But now I am kind of changing gears personally, and I'm in my second year of a master's of counseling. So I will be a therapist at the end of it. So I've noticed my own coaching and like framework really starting to change in the last maybe few years, as I've like really started to pay more attention to just like how mental health has really impacted my clients, and just recognizing that like my scope as a nutrition coach has ends somewhere. And I found that like the conversations with my clients that are just on the other side of that scope are really where I'm like excited. And so I was like, well, I mean, it would be unethical for me to, quite frankly, like try and approach those conversations. So it was like, okay, it's time to like build a new skill set and get some more tools so that I can like ethically and safely and effectively like help a different set of clients with different things. So eventually I'll move out of nutrition completely. It's like very tricky to operate in both spaces in terms of like legality. But yeah, it's definitely been informing like how I show up as a coach. And I mean, to bring us like full circle why we're here, like really how I'm like interpreting messaging about the fitness space, and how I'm like changing my own communication, I think,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. Yeah.
That definitely brings us on to like basically the topic that we wanted to chat about is so last week, I think last week, probably this time last week, I posted a
Yeah.
real story. It was first a story on my Instagram, because I was reading a book by Gabriel Mate called The Myth of Normal, and it's about
Mhm.
trauma. And basically, I was just getting riled up recently because of the influx of messages, but also the influx of what I've been seeing on social media as people using their past traumas or what they think is trauma, and using that as an excuse for everything bad that's happened in their life, or using it as an excuse to not get after the things, the goals and dreams that they potentially have within their life, whether that be career, business, relationships, friendships, anything, fitness, health and fitness goals. And it even comes up within my own coaching business as well, is
Mm.
having clients come to me with a lot of like mental health stuff, and
Mhm.
them expecting me to be their therapist without them saying it or even thinking it. They're thinking that I'm their
I mean,
therapist.
sometimes I say it.
And I straight up have to be at times like, I will be definitely compassionate and understanding and hear you out and hear what you have to say. But a lot of people come to coaches, especially within the lifestyle fitness, I feel, as well as the bodybuilding industry, come to coaches, and maybe not at the beginning of their journey, but somewhere along in their journey, they start treating their coach like a therapist and expecting them to give them answers or give them feedback or give them advice when that person, that coach, is not licensed, it's not ethical for them to give answers on these particular topics. And it's been a very frustrating space for me, because I just want to shake these people at times, because like I'm sick of their fucking excuses. Um, but basically, when I posted that reel on Instagram, Nicola messaged me and she was like, "Can we talk about this?" And I was like, I was at first like, I was like, "Oh my god, she's gonna fucking attack me." Pit in my stomach. But then I was like, no, she probably just wants to have a conversation about it and like see what I have to think of what I said, because again, we run into the issue with like social media in general. Is like you only have so many,
Mm-hmm.
you have only so many letters or so many icons that you can use to, or so many minutes or so many seconds that you can use to explain your point or bring a point across to the audience that you're trying to grab attention of. And that's basically what social media and reels and TikTok are at this moment in time. And that's how I would say, as a coach, in order to gain more clientele, maybe not clientele, but gain more clout, shall we say, you have to go out and say not these outlandish things, but you have to say things that make people pay attention to you. And that's not that I made that reel for that purpose. I made that reel for the purpose of exactly what I said on the reel, which
Yeah.
was basically talking about people using their trauma card or their victim card, and them associating or attaching their identity to their past traumas, and holding so tightly, so vigorously onto that part of their identity, that if it in any way, shape, or form started to unravel, that they wouldn't actually know who they were. And that's the scary part for them. So when they actually see that part of their identity start to unravel, or somebody starts to pick it apart, they hold on to it even more tightly and they start to defend themselves even more.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah, you chat now.
So, I mean, to put it quite frankly, she posted that and I was triggered. And I've been thinking a lot about like, because of that, this like negative connotation with the word triggered, because it's used to like paint people as like soft little butterflies who can't like handle like a tough conversation. But like truly, we are all triggered all the fucking time. Like triggered is just another word or like a colloquial term for you had an emotional reaction to something. We have hundreds of them throughout the day because like we're all human beings with our own values, our own experiences, our own beliefs. And anytime something like comes up that doesn't quite fit within our lens, like we're going to be triggered, whether or not we give that space and time and energy or not, whatever. But like, I think first and foremost, like I don't love the word triggered, but I absolutely was triggered by that post. And I like felt it. Like there was like a visceral reaction. I was like, oh, like what is she saying? This is someone like I love so much and like respect so much, and yet I do not agree. And I think that's like, I mean, to talk more deeply about our relationship, something that I was really drawn to about you in the beginning is that I did not agree with a lot of the things you said, not because I didn't think you were a great person or a great coach, but because you just saw the world differently from me. And at the time and currently, like that's what I want in a coach. I don't want a replica of me who's going to like say shit that I already exists in my brain. I want a new perspective. And so while I'd love to say I was just like this enlightened, like stoic bitch being like, oh, it's okay. Like, I'm not going to react to it. I like had an emotional reaction to it. I think, especially because, like, as I learn so much more about trauma and see how it comes up in people's lives, in friends and family and clients, but in terms of like nutrition, I'm like, there's something to be said for the existence of trauma. And there's like big parts of it that are so nuanced and that we can't control. And so to just blanket state that, like, if you have trauma, you can't use it as an excuse, I was like, what? So I wanted to chat about it because at the same time, I knew that, it's Instagram. I operate on Instagram too. I'm constantly exhausted by the pressure to like talk about a complex subject with like a single post, and you can never put enough nuance or context in it so you're going to satisfy everybody. So I was like, okay, bitch, settle down, take a chill pill. and like really like work to understand where she's coming from, because I guarantee it's not as bad as you're reacting. And sure enough, like we chatted about it. And I think it was even just in the first thing you said, I was like, oh, okay. Literally just a misinterpretation of your message because of my understanding, because of my experience. And at the same time, I still think it's an important thing to talk about, because like the stuff we post or the stuff we say, it's going to impact clients. So like when I hear, oh, my coach doesn't think trauma, like me, okay, my interpretation was like, oh, okay, my coach doesn't think trauma is real and isn't like going to show up in my life. No, that's not what you were saying. And we figured that out as we talked. But like if I hear that, I'm like, oh, okay, well now I'm going to guard some of the things that I tell her. And now maybe I'm not going to tell her the whole truth when something came up for me, you know? And it's
You
like
don't feel safe
such a
in this relationship anymore.
yeah, like it's such a complex relationship between client and coach. And like there's the layer of money involved. Like one of us is paying someone else.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like advice giving, but you're paying for that advice, but you might not always like the advice, or feedback, for lack of a better term. So it's just like it's very complex. So I had a lot of like these emotions coming up, but ultimately, like I think it's probably helpful to just like chat through like what our exchange was after that, because I think it really broke down like the difference between what I thought you were saying and what you were saying, and how like there's so much truth to it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to scroll back basically to what I said, because I literally can't remember what is. But basically, um, post retrauma, you said are you open to having a conversation about it? So you said that you feel like you might be taking my intended message out of context. So you guessed your curiosity mostly lies around the context of the message, like who is it intended for, or like how are you defining trauma? I also want to reiterate that I'm just seeking to better understand. So like Nicola is so clear. She's such a good communicator. And like she was saying, like she straight away she was triggered, but she didn't bounce off on social media, or she didn't bounce off me and like go like attack me straight away. She actually like took a moment and was like, okay, I actually need to get a better understanding of what she's saying. um uh and me bringing this up is really more about me, my values, my experiences, than it is me wanting to change your mind. I do truly love that we see the world so differently. So this is me seeking to better understand your perspective. So basically, I think based off of that, I said that obviously I don't think trauma is not like I obviously know that trauma is real.
Mhm,
I've been through
mhm.
traumatic experiences myself, and I'm definitely not trying to negate or what is Zoom doing? Zoom has been doing this all the time lately. Like stop with the
Is
AI.
your AI thing turned on? I don't know, but that was kind of cute. A thumbs up.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs
Anyway,
up for trauma.
I wasn't trying to dismiss anybody's experience, okay?
Mhm,
Like
mhm,
there's people obviously right now in the Middle East, in Gaza and Palestine, who are going through the most unbelievable, unthinkable things. And
mhm,
I know other people who have been, and myself, I've been through unthinkable things as well. I'm not saying that your experience isn't real or it's not valid,
mhm,
but there does come a point where whatever it is that you've experienced in your life, you can't continue to use this card and have it as a pass for the rest of your life for not having the relationships that you want, not having the friendships that you want, not having, let's say, the career or the business that you want. um, and at some point, you do have to take responsibility for your own life. Um,
mhm,
and I think that's kind of where we talked about it as well, and we were saying like with modern day social media as well, and like you said, the word triggered has become so overused right now that it's kind of become a meme. And like I was saying, like that trauma, like using the word trauma has become a meme as well.
mhm,
And you had said as well, like, so almost you said back to me when what I said to you, you said almost more about the victim mentality and the refusal to take self-ownership than it is about trauma. Or like people misusing the term to apply it to themselves as a way out of the work. For example, I have had X or Y happen to me, therefore I am incapable of changing my circumstances, which is not true.
mhm. Yeah, so I think like beyond just like the message and like the confusion on my part. I really do think like what you are saying is like super valid, because it is like at the end of the day, trauma or not, other people can't do that work for you. And it really is at the end of the day like your choice and your work to do, whether or not you want to. But I think what Katie was really getting at is people who are saying they want to do the work and then defaulting to, but I can't because.
Yeah.
So really differentiating between like someone experiencing trauma and not being ready or having the tools or the capacity to work through it is very different than someone who is saying, I want to change, I'm ready to do the work at all costs. And yet, there are times that come up quite often where there's a barrier that they're, not willing to work on or an excuse made. And I think as coaches, like it's not our job to tell people what's an excuse for them. I don't know what is an excuse for a client and what is a real true barrier. Certainly over time, as I get to know people, I get a sense of what is and what is not based on like where we've been, what we've talked about. And I can always ask, but I like struggle as a coach to be like, hey, don't give me those excuses because sometimes they're legit barriers. However, it is my job to then say, okay, if this is a barrier, how are we going to work through it? And that victim mindset that you're talking about, or those like excuses made, are when we can't possibly figure out a way through. We can't possibly do the work. And that really becomes a tricky cycle in coaching and in life in general. Yeah. And from that perspective, I completely understand the frustration with people who are like, no, I can't.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
like that's the frustrating part as well as coaches, because as coaches, we want to help our clients. We want to get them the best results possible, not just on the physical side of things, but we want you to improve in terms of your mindset as well within our scope. And when somebody point blank just says, I can't do this, and they don't want to put in the work to make the change, it leaves you at a dead end. It leaves you at a dead end as a coach. And you're like, well, how can I help you? I can't help you any further. So where do we go from here? And
Mhm. Well, I mean, that's a good part too, is like, yeah, okay, you can't, but can you tell me why you can't?
yeah,
Because that could be like a great insight. Maybe it is something bigger and deeper that they need to seek like alternative or extra support for. And maybe it's something little that we can work through if we talk about it.
yeah, for sure. Like I did a little bit of a preparation for this podcast, and I was like looking through like, well, let's say what's the difference of being a victim versus playing the victim. And like basically it's important to realize that there is a difference between being a victim and playing the victim. Feeling and recognizing that you are a victim of abuse, trauma, crime, or any other circumstance is different than playing the victim. The key word here is playing, which involves some level of exaggeration,
Mhm.
fabrication, or manipulation. Being a victim means that you are actually in a situation where you are legitimately victimized. Sometimes bad things happen that are of our control. Some people will hurt or screw us over. We don't cause, create, or deserve that, but we are responsible for how we choose to deal with it. And I think that's one of my favorite quotes of all time. It might not be your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So being the victim turns into playing the victim when your victim status is used to avoid responsibility, wallow in self-pity, and hurt, manipulate, or control other people.
Mhm. And I mean, I think we see it the most in this just like not being able to take responsibility
Yeah,
and not being able to like recognize that you are the only one who can change this. So what that boils down to is like not doing the work.
yeah,
And as much as like I'm sure you and I both, maybe not all the time, but sometimes are like, I wish I could do this
yeah,
for you.
yeah.
I can't.
And I think that's the biggest thing, that like misconception with coaching as well in general, is that people, let's say they're expecting that they're hiring a coach and they're like, great, I'm going to get in the best shape of my life because I've simple fact that I've hired a coach. But you've hired a coach to give you the knowledge, give you the tools, give
Mhm.
you the advice on certain topics, certain situations, certain things. It's up to you to do with that advice what you will, to do with that feedback what you will. You're the one who still has to do all of the work. And people don't realize that. They just think that because they paid for their monthly coaching, that all of their life problems are going to be fixed, or their coach is going to do the work for them, or somehow miraculously do that for them. But how would your coach even do the work for you in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like something I say to my clients all the time is like, I'm not there when you cook your meals. Like, as much as I would love to, like, come over and cook a meal with you, I can't. And so, like, where am I then missing the mark as a coach where I'm not giving you the feedback you need to actually like do the thing? So with clients, like sometimes I'll frame it as that is like, what am I not doing that isn't helping you? And sometimes that, like, putting it back on me as the coach is like, can be the little thing
Nudge.
that makes them go,
Yeah,
oh, if I had this from you, I actually could.
yeah.
And then when you check in and like they still haven't done it, okay, now you can literally say, I've done what you've asked of me. What are you not doing?
That's something that I've done numerous times as well. Is like, okay, like I'll be looking at a situation and I'll be trying to come up with a response as to how to respond to the situation at a check-in, for example, or a message across on WhatsApp. And I'll be like, what is it that you need from me right now?
Mhm.
And then I will do my best to like give that back to the client. Um, and then if the situation comes up again, I can wholeheartedly say, I've done everything in my power to help you, but this is on you now. This is your responsibility. And people don't like that. Some people really don't like that. It takes them a little, they'll either respond like, wow, like that hit home in a good way, in a positive way. Some people won't respond for a long time, but then they will respond and be like, wow, I needed time to like sit with that and reflect. And thank you for saying that. And then other people just won't respond because they're like, fuck this bitch.
Have you ever had a client quit because of the feedback you gave?
Yeah, once.
Mhm.
Once, but it was basically I had exhausted everything that we've said here. And I've basically just point blank called around. I was like, I cannot do any more for you. I cannot do anything else within my power to help you. This is your responsibility now. And the fact that you've still not taken responsibility for this is your fault. It's your problem.
Mhm.
So after that, like I didn't want to work with that person in the end because it just became an absolute nightmare. I was honest, it was keeping me up at night. And the
Mhm.
kind that keeps me up at night, aside from people who are competing that I have to stay up at night for, um, I don't want to work with. I want, like, when I'm working with somebody, I want it to be a collaboration. I want to enjoy coaching this person. I want it to feel like a good relationship. I want to be excited about hearing from this person. And I can wholeheartedly say I'm excited to hear about 99% of my clients. Um,
Mhm.
and that's what I want. And when it becomes that 1% where I'm like, oh my God, I have a message from this person. Oh my God, I have an email from this person. Or let's say I see their checking come in, I'm like, okay, let's go.
Lord Jesus, give me strength.
Yeah,
Yeah.
keep strength. So yeah. Have you ever had anybody leave in that type of way?
Yeah. I think they were, I don't know if it was like, I said one thing and they were done. It was more like a buildup over time where, like, I think we'll get into this. I made a note that we wanted to talk about this too, but just like this idea of like, but I'm not making any progress.
Yeah.
And yet when we go through like logs or check-ins, it's like they're also 99% of the time the client who doesn't respond to questions I ask in their check-in. They're the client that doesn't give me insight into their day beyond I slept 6 hours and I underate again. They're usually the client who is like going out to eat a lot and not telling you, or the client who's like not willing to make the trade-offs that you've already previously agreed on.
Yeah.
Because, like, as you know, when you're focusing on nutrition, and especially for the bulk of our clients who want to change their body composition, look leaner, lose weight, whatever their words are, like, there are lifestyle trade offs that have to be made.
Yeah.
Have to.
Yeah.
And those are the discussions I think are so important to have in the beginning, because you get it such a good sense of like, where is the line for this client? Where is their value or priority on, this fitness, health, nutrition goal? And are there other life priorities? Where is the line for them? And if you have that discussion up front and be like, okay, I understand that like you're in this 100% and yet your kids come first.
Yeah.
You're in this 100% and yet if X happens, we know that that's something you need. So, like, if a client needs a free meal a week for like family, great. We talk about that at the beginning, because then we talk about like what that needs to look like in order to continue to progress, what that looks like if it spirals and becomes a whole day of like free meals, what that looks like if it becomes a whole weekend. And we need to constantly check in on like, are your expectations aligning with your effort? Sarah and I talk about this all the time. I think I've made like a million posts that are just like, what are your expectations? What is your effort? Do they match? And if they don't, like, that is a conversation we can have. But at the end of the day, that's where the self responsibility lies.
Yeah.
Like I can't make that for you. I can't tell you what your like trade-offs and hard lines are. That's for you to decide. I can help you evaluate what you need to do to get to your expectations. But that's where like we're stuck as coaches. I can't go to the gym for you. I fucking wish I could. Let
Yeah.
me tell you what. But
um, you could not have said that. I could not have said that better. Aligning your expectations with your effort. And it comes up time and time again with certain lifestyle clients where they'll have these goals for themselves, but their actions, their behaviors do not align in any way, shape, or form with the goals that they have for themselves. And if that continues to be a problem with the client, what I like to do is I like to hop on a call with them and go through a values-based exercise with them and go through exactly what their values are. So I'll ask them before the call, I want them to write down their values, what exactly their values are and why their values are important to them. So for example, person X has a value of connection, of health, of career, things like that, relationships, and faith, for example. So we break it down and I ask them to go through each and every single value that they have. And at first, I ask them, okay, in order to value this value that you have, or in order to not value, excuse me, let me say that, in order to not value the value that you have, what would you have to do in order to not value that value? So for example, it was her health. Okay. She said that she would have to eat really poorly, not follow her nutritional guidelines, eat out all of the time, or more often, let's say 3 or 4 times a week. It would mean she would not move her body in a way that would be beneficial for her. It would mean drinking alcohol numerous times a week. It would mean not getting enough sleep every single each night. And we broke down each value for that. And it quite clearly showed that for her values, she didn't value them. She was doing exactly what she would have to do in order to not value that value. And that can be very eye-opening for a lot of people, to see, oh, wow, I don't value this. I don't value this part of my life. How are
it
you going
like
to
that's
do now?
I think that's such a good exercise. And I also think it could point to something else too. It's like maybe they do value it, but then when you bring that to their attention, you're like, oh, no wonder you've been feeling so shitty. And no
Yeah.
wonder you don't think like you've been making progress because you haven't been showing up for that value. Like, I'm sure we can all picture a time in our life where we've acted like not in accordance with our values, and just like the rot you feel inside, whether it's like, a conversation with someone didn't go well because you spoke out of your values or you acted in a way that like doesn't sit true to you. We all have those moments. But I think when you get into a pattern of it over time and like through this exercise, you bring it to them, yeah, it could absolutely mean maybe you don't value that the same way you're telling me you do, or maybe you do, and no wonder you feel so shitty.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's a thing that like some people have a strong affinity for, is when they do something that isn't in accordance with their values. like for you or me, we feel that really icky feeling inside, and it just like,
Oh yeah, I can feel it right now, secondhand, just thinking about it. It's
oh,
horrible.
it makes you feel horrible. Like I could not sleep. I could not sleep.
Oh yeah, the anxiety has never
Yeah.
been higher.
And then other people just don't have that. They don't have that organ in their body.
You think?
Yeah, 100%.
I feel like people do, but either they're unaware of that's what it is because they've never like done the work to recognize like I think there's a lot of people who are like, I have no idea what my values are because they've literally never sat down to think about it or never been prompted to or like don't have that level of self-awareness. But I think that like everybody has those things. They just might be like, I don't know what this feeling is. Fuck it.
True. And then it comes up in other ways, I guess, in
Hmm.
your life for sure.
Yeah, because like when someone's acting out of their values, they're usually the person who is like, showing up where everybody else around them is like, what the fuck is going on with this person? Like, I feel like someone, if you're
Yeah.
out with people and someone is acting out of their values, it's obvious. You might not know what those values are, but there's like an internal like incongruence there. And it's like, it's palpable, I think. And you're just like, ugh. Like,
Yeah.
there's something about the energy of this person that I can't fucking deal with. And it's usually because of like a serious misalignment of like their actions and their values.
Yeah. And I just, it's, I can think of one person in particular that like you've just described. And every few weeks, it's like, why am I making progress? Why am I
Mm.
like dropping body fat? And I'm just like, you ate 3,000 calories over your maintenance. You drank alcohol, binge drank alcohol every night. You didn't go to the gym. You didn't sleep. You didn't drink any fucking water. How the fuck do you expect to drop body fat? And she's like, what other things can we do? And I'm just like, what?
Sorry, I hate to laugh. I do love that question. What else can we do? I'm like, literally just this. Literally, like, pick one of those things, make a huge difference. But at the same time, like, obviously we're coaches, we have a different like approach to this. We obviously live, work, and breathe this stuff. So there is a level where it's like, yeah, these things come easier to us because we fucking love it. At the
Yeah,
same
but
time, hmm? Are
before I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
we gonna say the same thing? We
Probably.
might.
It wasn't always easy for us.
Exactly. And I even through this process, you have called me out before where you're like, oh, bitch, something's not checking out here because what you're showing me and then what you're checking in with, it's like pretty clear that like you're upset with yourself for your performance this week. And it's like, oh yeah, I am. And like that still happens. I'm not a perfect angel client as much as I pretend I am. Because like I have weeks where I'm like something happens and yeah, I make an excuse or I don't show up to the level that makes me proud. And
Yeah.
it's like I'm sure you can attest to this. It's very evident in my check-ins. It's very evident when you go through my logs. And on a client perspective, truth hurts, bitch. Truth fucking hurts. And I'm like, damn it, Katie.
It does hurt.
It hurts. But like, what else? What else am I like working with you for if not to catch me in those moments and gently, not so gently, remind me that like, remember when you said you were doing this for a reason? Yeah, remember that reason, okay?
You guys are getting a real insight as to how I coach on this podcast. I am really nice and I do try to be gentle as
See, it
possible.
is really nice, but like, how often do I message you back being like, honestly, fuck you?
Yeah, and it's like totally uncalled for. I'm like, what did I do to deserve this?
Okay, well, I am a little extra sassy, so, but
Speaking
Katie
of,
tells
like,
me she loves it.
if we don't if we mention like Nicola was off trading for a couple of weeks and I had
Ugh.
literally like from the UK like try and pry her out of the gym and convince her to not train while she was more than likely dealing with a really bad strain of COVID. And she was like, but I want to train. Like, what are you doing? And I'm
I'm
like,
like, but my physical
doing
health
this.
is fine. I just have a really terrible cough and can't breathe. It's fine though. It's chill. I'll just go in and like get a pump on. And like,
Um,
I know I shouldn't be in the gym, but like, at the end of the
yeah,
day, like, Val said this yesterday. She's like, this is why like you have a coach because after 2 weeks off, and for Val, she had a month off from being sick. We would have gone in there and busted our ass and probably felt so great in the moment and absolutely wrecked
Yeah.
ourselves for
Yeah.
the
And
rest of the week.
I'm dealing with this myself at the moment. It's like I'm off the gym for the past 3 days.
It's
And
horrible.
oh, it's horrible.
I
And
wouldn't wish
especially
this on
like,
my worst enemy.
and especially being like this close to a show as well. Like
No
every
shit.
fiber of my being is like, no, I
Mhm.
need to be doing my cardio. I need to be
Mhm.
pushing. I need to be like absolute death. I need to be training my arse off.
My
But
muscles are literally atrophying as we speak.
I'm withering away, cannot see. So and this is why I have a coach as well, is to keep me in line, because I know in my heart of hearts that the best choice or the best thing for me to do right now is to rest. That is
Mhm.
exactly what my body needs right now in order to push on for those last 3 weeks of prep. But if I keep pushing, I'm not going to make it to the end of the prep. If I was to push
You're
these
gonna
past,
look haggard as fuck when you
yeah,
get there.
yeah, and I don't want to look like a haggard, tired, withered physique. I want to look healthy, full, round,
Mhm.
bubbly, like a bodybuilder. Um, so yeah, yeah, that was a ride in of itself. I was just like constantly messaging her like every day. I was like, I'm not doing this because I hate you. I'm doing this because I care about you. I care about your health. I care about your long-term well. And she was just like having fucking none of it.
I'm like, oh, do you love me? Well, it doesn't seem like it.
Self-care
If
isn't
you
fun.
loved me, you'd let me go to the gym. You'd know
Yeah.
that I need this. So
But
yeah, I mean, I hope it came
then,
across that
yeah,
I
then
was, I
Nicola
still
came to
loved.
the decision herself that she was not going to go into the gym, and then it was all okay.
I mean, sometimes a bitch just needs to take the ownership for her own decisions, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but anyway, you're better, you're feeling better, and that's all that matters. So, what, with your knowledge now, with your master's degree, what piece or pieces of advice would you give to somebody who is playing the victim card?
Oh, wow. Wow, wow, wow. I mean, I think there's people who don't recognize that they're doing it. And, again, like, that's on you, babe. If you don't want to accept that that's like going on for you, that's okay. But like, you're not going to expect big things. Don't expect big things in your life if that's like where you want to live. It's not going to be conducive to great relationships. It's not going to be conducive to achieving anything big, health and fitness. It's probably not going to set you up for a great career trajectory, but like, I can't change that for you.
Yeah,
I think like within all of this, the biggest takeaway from like your original message and like our conversation and just what we've been thinking about it is like self ownership and responsibility is like to me the true driver of confidence. There's no better way to improve your confidence than by recognizing when you've made an excuse, when something triggers you, when, something goes against your values and do something about it. Doesn't have to be a
why
huge
as well.
action. What's that?
So not just when, but why to all of those things that you just mentioned.
For
So
sure. Yeah.
why has this triggered me? Why has this thing triggered me? Why have I responded in this way? Why do I feel this way?
Mhm. And then like it's your responsibility to do something about it.
Yeah.
I think like two, no one's asking you to be perfect in this process. No one's asking you to be the stoic bitch that never gets triggered. You're allowed to get triggered. You're allowed to have days where things fall apart and, you make every excuse in the book. That's okay. And it probably feels good in the moment, but recognize that if that becomes a pattern, you can't expect much.
Yeah.
And I would say, like, talk to someone about it, talk to friends, loved ones, get support, get advice, go see a fucking therapist if that's like becoming literally your identity. But I think it's like, it's really that self awareness piece. It's like, you have to start considering how you're showing up and if you're proud of how you're showing up.
Yeah. That's a big
I
one.
think
That's a
that's
really
like
big one.
your North Star to if you're making excuses or if you're like holding yourself
Yeah.
responsible for the
That's
rest of
part of the
your life.
reason that I have that at like the end of each of my check-in questions. The check-in feedback that I have for my clients is, are you proud of yourself this week?
Mhm.
And if you can answer that question honestly at the end of every single day, the end of every single week, you know you're doing pretty good. And but the biggest one there that you said for me as well is self-awareness obviously has to come first. If you don't even know that you're playing the victim card, then you're obviously not going to know how to start or even know where to start because you don't even know that you're playing that part in your life. Um, so yeah, these are the those are the things that I had written down as well as realize that you have more control than you think. There'll always
That's huge. That's so huge.
yeah, there'll
Because I
always be
think,
things like that we can control, but that's why we have to focus on what we can.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so for example, like if you went through abuse, that sucks, but you're still here and you're reading this or you're listening to this. And that shows that you're trying. And you are at least in control of something. Another one was like notice the role you play, which you touched on too. Like I'll say like first off, like I'm not trying to blame the victim here or anybody who is a victim. I'm not telling you to notice the role you played in your abuse, or once again, your abuse is not your fault or your circumstances are not your fault. Um, but to notice the role that you play means recognizing how your actions or lack of actions might have led you to where you are currently and how you're currently feeling. Do you tend to focus on the negative when good things happen? Do you still have something to complain about? Is there anything that you're grateful for in life? Do you let opportunities pass you by because you think you'll fail anyway? While it's easier to focus on other people or circumstances and point fingers, try to also be accountable to yourself, which you just touched on too. What I wrote down as well is like take responsibility, which you just talked about too. Taking responsibility for how you choose to deal with the situation doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It doesn't mean that the person who hurt you or the thing that happened isn't doesn't make you guilty or shouldn't be held liable. It doesn't mean that it's your fault. Taking responsibility means not taking out your anger or on other people. It means not blaming your feelings or your circumstances on people that had nothing to do with your negative experiences. So this is where you'll see people get triggered very easily. It means not thinking the
Well,
world.
yeah, that could have been the difference in the outcome of our conversation too. Like, had I come in hot with like when I was very emotionally unregulated and like feeling I was triggered, had I come in and been like, what the fuck did you just say? Like, this
Yeah,
doesn't make sense, and gone off, the outcome of our conversation would have been so different.
it would be the
But it's
end of our
like,
friendship.
probably, but it's like, okay, you are triggered and you are like, I don't want to say you're not responsible, but like it makes sense that you've had an emotional reaction to X or Y. That's totally okay. But your responsibility comes in with how you deal with it, because it's not that person's job who triggered you to make you feel better. It's really your responsibility to decide what you do with it. And if
Exactly.
you decide to go off on someone, that's your choice. If you decide to seek more information and maybe realize that your interpretation of it wasn't what they meant, like that's going to be a different outcome. And so like the self responsibility, the like ownership of your decisions really like does bleed through into so many areas of our lives. And I think it's a constantly like evolving process. I'm not going to feel brave enough to like have these tough conversations with everybody. And so there are going to be, relationships where, something triggers me, and instead of like bringing it forward, I do stew on it and like get upset. But I think again, at the end of the day, if you can connect it to your values, for me, I value our relationship way too much to just let it fizzle or to let myself get resentful, because I knew I would. I
Yeah,
know that about myself,
yeah.
that like if
I'm
I
the
let
exact same
this
in that regard
through,
as well.
I will get resentful and I will end a relationship.
Yeah.
So it's like, what's worth it to you at the end of the day? Do I value me being right in my mind, or do I value our relationship?
And that's again takes a lot of self-awareness and just being an adult in that regard, because I've had situations exactly like that in the past where I've just let things sit
Mm-hmm.
and stew with me, and it has very close friendships of mine, and it's happened in the past year even,
Mm-hmm.
uh, where I didn't voice how I truly felt because this person was attacking me, or this person maybe I cared too much about like I was afraid to speak up in like a similar situation as to what we've had. But it was like a direct conversation. Um, and it's ended up like with that friendship not being what it will ever be again.
And do you think the outcome would have been different had you like approached it with like, hey, I'm feeling upset by this. Can we talk about it?
I'm not sure because eventually I did actually say how I felt.
Mhm.
Um, and that when I voiced my not opinion, but how I felt,
Mhm.
that was not taken very well. And that hurt
Mm,
me even more. Um,
mm.
so it is what it is. It is what it
And I
is.
mean, like, that is the risk you take. But I think now, too, you can say at least you showed up for your values. At
Yeah.
least you took responsibility for your side of it and learned something in the process. It wasn't the best outcome. It wasn't like probably what you wanted, but you learned something in that situation. Whereas if you had stewed on it, think about like the relationship. If you still had that relationship with them, you'd feel shitty in that relationship anyway, because you'd
But I would
always
also
be
feel shitty about
responsible.
myself because I
Uh-huh.
would have
Uh-huh.
valued myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why I value the fact that like that person is no longer really in my life anymore, is because that was probably the first time in my 27 years that I actually spoke up for myself in that sort of like friendship
Mm.
scenario. And it was a real moment of growth for me because I was like,
Yeah.
no, I'm gonna say how I feel. I'm gonna say how this upset me and how I can't really trust this person anymore or speak unfiltered to this person anymore.
Yeah. And I imagine in the moment it didn't feel awesome. You probably felt really
Oh, I
shitty.
was shaking. I was shaking.
Yeah. But I bet looking back on it now, you're like, there was a real moment of confidence for me there, like confidence that you had never seen before, because you did something that truly was like, this is meaningful to me, and you acted on it instead of sitting back or then later, yeah,
Yeah,
playing the
100%.
victim.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the victim. 100%. So I think that's a really, really good place to like end the
Hmm.
podcast. And
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you. Thank you again so much for getting up at the crack of dawn, because obviously Canada, UK time is a hell of a lot different. And where Nicola is based in Canada, it's literally as far fucking west as you can go in
You
Canada.
are as far west as you can
Yeah.
be.
Um,
Us
so
trying to figure out the time to do this was pretty cute.
with
I'm
me
good
on
for the time
prep,
change. I have no fucking clue.
with me on prep and Nicola like not really knowing like
Oh
anything.
yeah, we had
Like
timelines.
I was like, okay, it's 5 o'clock my time right now, and we need to do it before that.
Yeah, brain literally shuts off at 4:59.
Yeah, literally. So thank you very much. So much for coming on the podcast. Honestly, this is probably the best episode that we've had thus far. So thank you so much for
No, don't say that.
your expertise. Because it's really good to get like obviously you're not a fully qualified professional yet, but you will be in the near future with the biggest biceps that ever existed.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's literally my goal in my spreadsheet. What is your long-term goal? Be the therapist with the biggest biceps anybody's ever seen.
yes. So that is our goal, and we are well on our way to doing that. Um, but thank you again for your time. Thank you to everybody who's listened. I know, hand on heart, so many people are going to find this episode super beneficial and have learned something new in this episode. So if you're still listening, make sure you stop the podcast, screenshot it, share it to your stories, tag myself and Nicola Spencer, Nicola at Paradigm Nutrition.
I mean, we have my personal account is just Nicola Spencer, but we also have Paradigm
Okay.
Nutrition. Yeah.
Um, Tag us in your stories and let us know where you are listening to the podcast in the world, what time of day you're listening to it at. But thank you again for listening. Thank you for tuning in. And we will be back next week with the ballerina and the bodybuilder.
Cute.
Balloons, the fucking balloons.
Balloons to celebrate the end of
AI,
it. Okay, well.
fuck off. Oh my God.